All right, I'm here with Rust, and I've got myself a little factory base I built for use with customers. It processes all the ores you can collect in the game as well as the crude oil in order to make low-grade fuel. So the vending machines sell keys to each of the doors on each side. Once you get inside, there's two boxes for input and output, and simply the customers put in the wood and the crude oil up the top, and eventually they'll get the low-grade out to the bottom. We have some counters that increment every minute as long as the machine is operational, so people can see how much of their order is done and for me to know how long it's taken. And these circuits are powered by this. When the conveyor here, the conveyor passes and succeeds, it passes a signal to here, which is boosted by electricity, and the signal is passed out here, which increments the counter and activates the timer, which turns on the lights, so that there's a visual thing. The piping itself is not that complicated. It comes into a conveyor, it splits off to either side. This is the input branch, and then it gets a little bit messier where it sends itself to a buffer box, and another conveyor takes it out from there, splits it off into each of the chambers, and a signal off the filter pass on this then splits itself over to here into splitter boxes, which activates each of the igniters to turn on the furnaces itself. If the furnaces run out of fuel, they turn off, but then they'll be turned off when they get a new signal. So even with small amounts of things to be processed, it'll still function. And over the other side is exactly the same thing. So we have a 10 refinery throughput, which came out to, I think it was 400 low grade every minute, which is more than most people have on the server. We've processed quite a few thousand already. Back here is just the electricity room with a couple of labels and splitter boxes. E for elevators, left and right for the refinery, then lights, another elevator, and cameras. We have a camera on each side of the refinery so people can take a look while they're waiting for their stuff to process or what's going on. So after the refinery section, we've got the ore processing center. We've got an input and output box, the same kind of counter system as the other side, so it's built on the other side of this wall. But in addition, because these orders take a lot longer, like an hour or two, I've had a telephone, which is purely cosmetic, but a personalized customer box. They can put their own code in to access the input and output, so other people don't get batches confused. And the idea would be that I call them to tell them that it's done, but nobody uses a phone in Rust. So again, these are the circuits that power the counters and the timers and the flashing lights. One thing I didn't mention was if both filters fail, like it currently is with nothing processing, there's an AND switch up top that takes the signal from both the fails and powers the red one to know that nothing's going on. That's a better explanation than last time. Okay, so electricity-wise, this room's a bit more complicated. We have a turbine above coming into a battery. This is to power all the circuitry. We got circuitry, conveyors, and the metal branch of the ore processing. The input pipes are again a little more complicated. We've got the input box that anybody can use, and then the two customer boxes. They come through on the wall here. So right now, everybody's box is hooked up, so like a general customer, which then is sent to another buffer box just because it seems to be working better than the buffer built into the conveyors themselves. You can put a buffer here, but I never find that they work correctly. It causes issues. So I do a manual buffer box with a maximum capacity. And then each of these is split off into 3 different branches with conveyors that are only interested in high quality metal or sulfur. So the metal is probably the most straightforward. It's similar to how the refinery works. Signal is passed here from the filter pass, which goes into this AND switch, which goes into the branch, into a splitter, and then again those splitter outputs are just to igniters, conveniently placed back here. So this is an igniter. It simply just tries to turn on anything that requires fuel in the area. So I have, I think it's 6 of those spread amongst the 9 main furnaces, and again they take wood and they take ores, the metal ores, and they are smelted down to produce metal fragments and to produce charcoal, which is useful for other things in the game like gunpowder. And then the more interesting thing from a technical standpoint were the high quality metal and the sulfur branches. So these signals are just the same kind of thing. It's the filter pass. So when something is successfully sent through this conveyor, it is boosted by an electronic current here because the output from this is very low when it has a successful operation. So I boosted that up with electricity. send the signal over here for the sulfur branch. I think it is, yep, sulfur branch. And there's 3 chambers with 6 electric furnaces in each. And this became a lot more interesting because you have to power it 3 ways. One for the power to turn the device on, so they all currently have power, even though it's not really being used. And then a turn on and a turn off signal. So this is what really posed the challenge for building this side of the factory. This was the interesting stuff. So pipe-wise, you can see we've got the main input here for a sulfur branch. It goes into a splitter here, into each of the 3 chambers. And then internally, you've got splitter into splitter into splitter, just splitting everything up equally. And luckily, the conveyors in Rust are pretty generous, and they'll only make sure a certain amount is in each machine, which is very good because otherwise you get overflown. And right, so the circuit-wise for this was where the real thoughts had to be put in. This is where the signal is received. It's currently powered off because it's not true. But when it is true, it is sent into a AND signal, an AND switch, which is boosted again by electricity. It sends a signal not only to a timer to turn on the signal to power on the machines, but it also sends a signal to block out the fail possibility. So without this XOR gate, this system is able to be powered, but because the XOR gate is only activated when 1 input and not 2 is activated, once a signal is received saying that there is ore to be processed and there is a filter pass, it temporarily turns off the fail box. So we've received the ore, we've received a positive signal, and everything will turn on. As it flows through the pipes and processes, there will be filter passes, which just continues the system. It sends it back in. But once we finally run out, a timer is also activated for the failures, for all the failure boxes on each of the walls for each chamber, and each chamber turns itself off by a filter fail. So a filter fail is sent to here, combines with the box, and is obeying the rules of the top box, the top splitter box. So each chamber will turn off when it's done processing ores, because it seems like the conveyors in Rust aren't evenly splitting things up. And then we have a couple of cameras to monitor what's going on as well. And this is just a mirror of the other side of the factory, except for the high quality metal, which processes slower. So there's less chance of overflow. But in terms of building, it was quite fun to plan out and think about. And in terms of learning something about circuitry, it was quite interesting because of the way Rust works. This is a simple elevator with some if switches and power to the buttons and pass-throughs. Nothing amazing. But to wrap up, I've got some camera views from inside each of the chambers of the refinery and some camera images from the furnaces, which you can also access from the Rust companion device on your mobile or tablet, which gives you like a thermal image, a basic 3D rendering, and finally a drone for a top view of the furnaces, which is quite impressive. Get a good scope of what the factory is from here. And if the server had a bit more activity, we would have sold vehicles and other things, because the idea for this base would be it would be fully automated, and people who play the game would be able to pop in, have their resources processed, and do something in the VIP area here. But as a concept, it was fun. It took about 15 hours to get the factory up and running. There's still a little bit more proof testing I could have done, but I think it's just an enjoyable journey, really.